What is one thing about doing business in Enugu that is just different from doing business in other states?
I would say the advantage that you would have is access to talent, that are a lot more affordable than other places or other regions. Let's say typical talent that you would hire in Enugu will not be as expensive. Let's say, for example, I have a little exchange of words, a misunderstanding with one of my partners. Once a work shows up, or more, we just put it aside and we get to work. So that's also another thing that a lot of people have to imbibe in running a business. Emotions should always be aside.
Let's say that your first big project, right? First, say you got a contract of 10 million naira.
Okay, so the thing is, over time, we've been able to build systems around most of the things that we do. Systems around jobs, like marketing the company, systems around legal, systems around accounting, systems around running the operational aspect of running the business itself, systems around talent development. No matter the amount of money that comes into the company now, there's a system that allows for it to be channeled into the right things.
Michael Ikechukwu.
Yeah, so my name is Ihenacho Ikechukwu Michael.
Oh, that's how you prefer it, the other way around.
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur, and I've actually been on this journey for a while. I've co-founded a couple of startups, a couple of companies. So yeah, pretty much started in the media space, and being in the media has actually exposed I and my partners to a lot of things, and we've had the opportunity to work across diverse sectors, including the government, just like you mentioned. Yeah, so currently I'm also working closely with the Enugu SME Center through my company, Blue Africa Media. Yeah, so it would be nice to actually share some of the nuances of that journey on this podcast.
So Enugu has started getting a lot of attention in the past 3 years.
Yeah.
In recent times, in regards to the entrepreneurial landscape, startup, talent, and development, and everything in between. Some notable startups that have come from Enugu that we know of is WeCrypt and Zen Finance.
So, YCrypt, actually.
Sorry, YCrypt. Is it
Yes.
YCrypt?
Yeah, YCrypt.
Oh, YCrypt. Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. YCrypt and Zen Finance. Oh, and it's good to know that YCrypt and Zen Finance are owned by the same person.
Yes.
And then we have Blue Africa and other startups as well. Zen Finance is one of the most successful, in my opinion, based on the information I've read about them.
Yeah.
We are seeing some other startups, newer startups coming out in this space as well. But to get clear concept, right? I think we should start with you and start with, why media? Why do you leave school and say that I want to do media?
Okay, so actually I studied engineering, electrical electronics engineering in Enugu State University of Science and Technology. So, but then in the early days in my university, I actually started picking up skills.
Oh.
Yeah, so I had a computer. I had the opportunity to have a computer very early on. I think I got my first laptop when I just got admission into school. So I was like, okay, so what are the things I could actually do with this? So I started learning. I had love for art. I used to draw a lot, primary school days, even in secondary school. So I had this friend of mine then, that kind of introduced me into graphic design. So then that was it. I installed Photoshop, CorelDRAW, Illustrator, and then I started practicing. So I actually had my first job as a student. This was in my 100 level. So what happens is after school, we usually have this tutorial that lasts for 2 hours. So typically school rounds up between 1 to p.m. So the tutorial usually starts by 2 and ends by 3-ish. So by that time I go to, it was a printing press. So we just go there, spend an hour or two, and then, go back home. But then Saturdays, we work the entire day. We weren't even being paid, but we're just doing
We're being paid with the experience.
Exactly.
And exposure.
The exposure, yeah. So we had this other bigger guys there that were just, putting us through. And that was really how, everything started. But for me, over time, I started looking into like, what it really means to be in that ecosystem. I started seeing the likes of Pulse, I started seeing the likes of Naji. It was actually Debola Williams and Trude Judon. They were like the top guys, within the ecosystem then, and Red Media, so sometime
Right?
to
Are you saying Red Media had a good
exactly, yes.
coverage in the East as well?
No, not really. I mean, there was internet, so we're seeing stuff from like their Facebook page and also from their website. They had this Naji.com then, this blog. There was Lindy KG. So these were the early players in the the new media space as well. And Red Media was actually one of the leading PR agencies from Nigeria then. So we're actually looking up to them a whole lot. And most of the things that we did, or most of the things that we're looking at certain campaigns of that they were actually executing them, and they started researching other companies that are outside Nigeria, looking into what they're doing. But this was, I think, 2-3 years down the line when I had met my partners, Anugo Osadebe and Christian Okoli. So at the time, we just knew that we wanted to build something within the media ecosystem. And of course, everybody has their motives, right? For me, then, I was also in the tech space as well, because I picked up tech skills. I started doing web development early on, learned PHP, HTML, CSS. This was when I was still in school. Towards like my 400 level, yes, I can still remember. And then, I was looking at how do I combine those skills and how do I, make great things out of it. So for me, my motive then was like, I knew that, okay, that along the line, I was going to diversify either in tech or either in any other, industry. And early on, one thing I also discovered was that there are two major things that make great companies stand out. One is their ability to innovate and evolve. And then another thing is their ability to market and distribute what they're doing. So for me, I figured that if we're able to find the hack in marketing, then it would be very easy for us to diversify into different sectors. So, and then that was the major driving incentive for me to start a media company. Yeah, and so far so good.
And then you found Christian Okoli, you found your other co-founder, and you started Blue Afrique. And you've also co-founded other startups, other companies out of Enugu.
Yeah.
I think the question of Enugu is just a no-brainer.
So that was like our ground.
Yeah, so your ground.
I grew up in Enugu, and so it was pretty much very easy for us to start up there, where at least people know us and trust us. And a couple of people that gave us the opportunity to explore and show our talents. And we're grateful for those opportunities. And to be honest, the journey hasn't been easy, because to a great deal, most of the things that we have done has been more or less all striving to learn on the job and learn very fast. Experimenting, knowing what works, adopting the one that works, implementing it into the system and running with it as quick as possible. Because we didn't have funding, right? We never, I think we've run Blue Afrique Media for a little over a decade now. There's never been any external funding whatsoever, to the company. Every single thing that we've built, I mean, we pretty much started Blue Afrique Media in a restaurant, right?
Really?
That was where we met. And then at the early stages, I wouldn't say that we had it all figured out, because we didn't even really know what we were doing, because at the time we didn't really have mentors. We didn't really have mentors were people that were looking up to online. We're just following up online. We didn't really have a one-on-one interactions with them. Exactly. So where we actually got into the business of what we're doing was like 3 years down the line. And the advantage that we had was that we were young. And that is why I always tell a lot of young people, start early. If you know that you have it in you to be an entrepreneur and you have the privilege, it's also good to, go the route of having a 9 to 5. Because the truth about it is that there are certain things that, there are certain areas that I know that would have functioned better if I had, a solid 9 to 5 for, let's say,
It's
2, 3,
back
4
up
years.
somewhere.
Do you
That's starting
understand?
early advice. I used to say, when you're a child, you can make a stupid mistake deliberately, and they will say, "He's still a child." And because you are a child, that mistake you made hold no value.
Yes, and
Hold
you
no-
have time to
You have
even
time
recover
to,
from the
and
mistakes.
they will forgive you easily. But imagine a 30-year-old man making a 19-year-old mistake.
Exactly.
Like, everybody just look at you like, why haven't you learned this thing at your age?
Exactly. So
That's the advantage of starting early.
exactly. So it's a very huge advantage. We had age on our side. I mean, we're still students. You know, we had registered the company. I think registered the company when I was still in 400 level.
And since then till now, the
Yes.
three of you have been co-founders.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
never been an idea where I know they do this thing again. You guys should continue with your startup.
Well, no, there's never been that. I think that is actually what makes the tripartite arrangement work. Because even when, you know, there's never been a scenario where 3 people are fighting at the same time.
It's 2 people at a time.
Exactly. It's always 2 people at the
And
time.
then someone
It's
is there to
always
mediate.
one person to mediate and say, okay, let's do it this way.
Yeah.
And then everybody now agrees. Once the agreement is 2 against, you know, 1, we're good to go. It's always 2 against 1 or all
3
3
at a-
agree. And that has actually what, you know, it's made things work really for us. And yeah, and another thing is, I think the friendship also, we have very, very solid friendship amongst us. So, you know, even when we quarrel, let's say, for example, I have a little exchange of words or misunderstanding with one of my partners. Once a work shows up or more, we just put it aside and we get to work. So that's also another thing that a lot of people have to imbibe in running a business. Emotions should always be aside. When it's time for business, do business. There will always be time to, you know, address those emotional aspect of things. But, you know, EQ is also very, very critical in running a business, especially when it comes to partnership.
Yeah.
You should know when to let certain things go. It's not everything that you have to nibble on. You know, you need to understand, and of course, you need to understand the people that you're dealing with and know how you can, you know, get to interact.
How do you
and work
guys
with them
handle
smartly.
money? Let's say that your first big project, right? A first, say you got a contract of 10 million naira. And
Okay, so the thing is, over time, we've been able to build systems around most of the things that we do. Systems around jobs, like, you know, marketing the company, systems around legal, systems around accounting, systems around, you know, running the operational aspect of running the business itself, you know, systems around talent development. So I don't think, no matter the amount of money that comes into
There is a
the company
system.
now, there's a system that's, you know, allows for it to be channeled into the right things. So yeah, there can never be any amount of money that will, maybe at the early stage, maybe that could have been a challenge, but at this point, we have a very, very lengthy roadmap. We know exactly what we want to do in the next 5 to 10 years. We know the industries that we want to diversify into. So there's no amount of money that comes in now that we don't know where to put it, or there's no plan for where it's going into. So that's one thing I also, you know, get to speak about or talk about when I meet young entrepreneurs. At the early stages, you may not be able to like build the systems, that's the truth. But the goal should be building the brand, right? You need to, because there's always 2 challenges, whether you want to make money or whether you want to build the brand. If you want to make money, what it simply means is that when the opportunity comes, when the money comes in, you guys will share the money and then that's it. But the truth about it is that it's to the detriment of the company.
So
Detriment of
when
the
you were
growth of
building the
company.
brand, did like, you know, let's say being young means that your cost of living is low. At
Exactly.
least some people were still with their parents,
Exactly.
and eventually the cost of living starts to pick up.
Yes.
And does it mean that, even though we still have a lot of questions, but I just want to ask this question because I think a lot of founders would have the question to ask is,
Yeah.
how do you guys handle the situation where you were building brand and
We're paying bills too.
you were paying bills, you were building brand? So basically, any money that comes in goes out the door by building the brand.
Yes.
Do you guys have a job at the time where you were doing that to offset your personal bills, since you
Okay,
keep paying yourselves?
So at the time, early on, we're students, like I said. So we're pretty much feeding off our parents, you know, pockets. And then when jobs came, we actually paid ourselves stipends as well, because of course you have to pay yourself as much as possible. Not much. It was just a little, more or less you just tackle a few things like transportation, data and stuff like that. But yeah, of course we had side hustles, right? I had a side hustle as well, which was more or less like, covering most of my bill at the time, which had no conflict whatsoever with what we're
with the other
building Happily African.
was it like a unanimous decision that you had a side hustle, or you all agreed that all of you go and find side hustle?
Yes. Well, it wasn't really a thing. It wasn't defined. Let me just put it that way. We just had that agreement that, no matter what you're doing, one, you shouldn't distract your commitment to building the brand, because that's the primary focus. And then, it shouldn't be a conflict. There shouldn't be a conflict. Let's say I go outside and get another media job and then I'm doing it by the side. No, you have to bring it in. Right, that's the whole point of running the business. So whatever you're going to have to do as a side hustle, it has to be outside the purview of the nature of the business that you're already operating in. So yeah, so that was like the guideline. Yeah, so the secret was, as much as possible, there was a side hustle, to make ends meet. And then, got to the point where we had to now adjust the system a little bit to be able to accommodate, paying our bills to an extent. It doesn't mean that it covers up everything, because of course, money, there's always need for money and more money, you understand? So, but another thing is also contentment, right?
Very important.
Knowing your journey, knowing where you're going, looking at the big picture, and, being content enough to, more or less carry yourself with what you have at the time, knowing fully well that at the shortest possible time or in the long run, you would have enough to cover all those other, bills and fantasies that you've always had. So that's it.
So, Blue Afrique grew and expanded into serving the government.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Okay, so, well, let me just say, at the time when we're doing what we're doing, we're still doing it, obviously, but at the time there weren't a lot of people that were doing what we're doing
in your space.
You would have, yes, so we're running an integrated marketing and communications agency. So we're doing like 360, from advertising to PR and communication to multimedia. So it's a lot, right? And yeah, it was just more or less, that youthful energy as well that also helped us be able to engulf all these things into our nature of business. And at the time, there wasn't any agency. I don't know of any agency in Southeast.
So you had the advantage of first move. You had the first mover advantage in this
Exactly.
stage.
No, there were people who tried.
First serious mover advantage.
Exactly. Serious, that's the word.
Yeah.
There were people who tried, but they didn't really scale.
You had structure prior to the time, and you've been able to handle bigger projects, because I think I've been following you guys for quite some time. And before I think you got into the government, you've been handling massive projects.
Yeah, so we've had opportunity to, stick together and do like some really amazing projects. I can remember back then, 2018, 2019, we had already started doing work for ECOWAS, West Africa Health Organization. We had traveled, even I think in 2019, we're part of the Assembly of Health Ministers. We're one of the media, team at that program then. So, yeah, people in Enugu, that also actually inspired a lot of people. People started trying out, building things around the media. A lot of young people also started looking into it. Okay, these guys, I'm seeing what they're doing. I think I should actually, those who had the flair, right? So I think the exposure that we're able to gather and, some of the little portfolio that we had at that level, especially between 2017 to 2019, that was what gave us the edge. And then our first shot at it, we had actually done a few things, but that was outside the government, but geared towards the government. It was 2015, we tried to work with a couple of politicians, help them with their political campaigns. In 2019 as well. But then, 2019. But when we actually kicked in fully and started working for the government was in 2020.
COVID.
Yes, COVID. So at the time, I think the SME agency had a new boss, someone who, wanted to do things differently, someone who really wanted to project the state and also project the work that he intends to do at the agency. So he came in and then he was doing his research. Okay, can I work with? Who are the guys that, I can work with, especially with the media aspect, to help me propel what I'm doing. So he found us on Google, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then he reached out.
So there's no uncle, there's no somebody that knows somebody.
No.
This was just pure searching who's going to do
funny enough, there's been a couple of people who has actually reached out to us just from doing their research on Google with no mutual connections whatsoever. So yeah, and since then it's been an amazing journey. First things first, it's not every client that we work with, because as much as possible, we have our principles, right? Yes, as much as we need the money, but it's not every project that we're back on. Any project that would not, give us a positive, that will not put us in positive light, or any project that is, intended to manipulate people or cajole people into, doing certain things, of, following a certain narrative, was not for us. So at the time when the agency reached out to us, we saw, some of the things that they wanted to do differently. We understood the concept of how he wanted to operate, and we knew that was someone that we were really, really interested in working with, and that was how the relationship started.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So and let me just speak a little bit about some of the things that the agency has done over the years. Since 2022 now, there's been a lot of amazing projects, especially in the human capital development aspect of things, right? There's been lots of, even before then, right? I don't think Enugu was really, most talents that we had in Enugu were people who, fended for themselves, who discovered things for themselves.
There was no system, there was no like a support system.
Exactly. There wasn't really any system that really exposes you to, what is really going out in the outside world. Because the truth about it is that people who were doing, a lot of great things were either in Lagos or maybe in Abuja.
Yeah.
You would hardly see, young people that are doing stuff, right? It was at the emergence of Enugu SME Center and then companies like Tennessee. There's Tennessee that now later founded Genesis Tech Hub.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot of startups that springed up, are mostly from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because they were the ones that started the first, accelerator and incubation training programs for, people in the tech space, people who wanted to learn tech skills. So yeah. But Enugu SME Center came in and gave a total different dynamics to the entire system. At the time, people didn't have the opportunity to learn skills at a very, very subsidized rate. So the agency pretty much made it very easy. We've had trainings across diverse sectors, from cybersecurity to full stack product design to data analytics to even in automobile, we've done automechatronics and this.
So the SME Center, the basic goal of the SME Center was to provide subsidized to free education for SMEs within the of those who want to have some skills or the other.
Yeah. Okay. So it's beyond that. So access to microcredits is one of them.
Okay.
And then also access to job opportunities, and then access to capacity development.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's in a nutshell what the agency is really.
And the agency started when?
It's been existing, let's say, since 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
And this was was it the same governor that was on seat that created it, or was it a different governor?
Okay, yeah. So I think it was commissioned by the previous administration.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I've had a couple of people head the agency up until when, So yeah, when Honorable Arinze Chilofia came in, he actually, he actually gave a totally different tone to what the agency was really all about. So it wasn't really business as usual. At the time, people thought that it was just about loans, right?
Oh,
Yeah, but even in the loan system, there were a lot of, a little bit of, for the lack of a better word, irregularities within the system. But he came in, was able to pull in a lot of very good partnerships, where we had some very, solid microcredit programs. But mostly over the years, we've done a lot on human capital development. Yes. So currently, even last year, we've been able to bring in Cafe One into Enugu State.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
So
So
trust Kelechi to properly document.
exactly, and that was just one of the branches. A lot more are going to come in.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other amazing tech hubs or tech
So we have Cafe One. Before Cafe One, we had Genesis.
Yeah, we had Genesis, but that space that creates that open co-working space where people can come and network and build things together wasn't existing
Yes.
up until now.
So
We have
now.
Cafe One. So there are a lot of other amazing tech hubs that are gonna spring up, which I'm not allowed to spill the tea, but
Yeah.
of course just expect a lot of massive innovation in Enugu, especially in tech. You would see the strides of the current administration. You would see that this is a government that is serious. It's a government that is very serious about promoting education and innovation. His Excellency is building a smart schools across each ward in Enugu State. So that really tells you the amount of energy and the amount of interest that he has in Enugu. So
For all of us in Lagos and Abuja to start having it, what is going on in Enugu, that means that your work in properly promoting, properly putting the spotlight on what you're doing in that state and providing advisory to the government on how best to project what you're doing has been working.
exactly.
For us to care a little bit about it.
Exactly. So for us, early on, a lot of people, when we started talking about some of our training programs, the interest was quite low because, of course, people don't really believe in the government.
Yeah.
But when, we kept pushing and people started signing up for these training programs, success stories started springing up, and, we amplified it so much that people really knew that these things are real, right? When we advertise programs now, people are,
Yeah, eager to join in.
exactly. So, but at those early years, it wasn't really like that, but now people know that there's a serious administration in office and, that's very eager to push young people and make sure that, their skill sets are well harnessed and they're given the opportunity to, to thrive. And I think the major amazing thing about the Human Capital Development Initiative is the access to job opportunities that it comes with, because most private sector partners that we work with, we also encourage them to adopt most of these tech talents and give them the opportunity to have internship positions. Not tech talent, most of these talents, because it's not only in tech that we've had programs. So yeah, if you do well, within the course of your training program, you have the opportunity to get a slot, either as an intern or even as a new intake within the industry that you got trained in. So yeah, it's not just about training people; it's also giving them the opportunity to have access to jobs and also preparing them to also go the entrepreneurial route as well.
The SME Center just, from what I gathered, was that the SME Center started as a place just to dish out loan. That didn't work because without the necessary education and how to harness that loan,
Yes.
they would just collect the loan thinking that the loan is sufficient for the business. But because they lack the knowledge about how to properly do those things, they will realize that it's like you want to start a painting and you say, okay, I think I need 100,000 naira for this painting.
Yeah.
And then you collect 100,000 naira, realize that could only get you the canvas and the brush. Then you don't have paint, and so you can't paint anything.
Yeah. So what we actually did, or rather what the agency did, was we have a mandatory financial literacy program that you have to go through before you access any loan, right? So there are procedures to it, and one of it is that you must go through that program. So yeah, if you don't go through it and if you don't pass, you can't have access to those
loans.
facilities. Exactly. So that way we're able to checkmate, all those wrong informations and, the wrong mindsets that people have around loans. So you know that you're going to have to pay back this loan.
It's not government.
You're
It's about
prepared.
money.
Exactly. You're prepared to collect the loan. You know exactly what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
And you know that you have to pay within the timeline that you've been given. So yeah, with that, where the risk was able to be curbed to a large extent.
And the money started looking more like the last tool that will be deployed for the skill that has been given, rather than it being the first tool that will be deployed before the skill is given.
Exactly.
Working with the government, or how in general, how has it been so far?
Well, let me just say, I think the major thing for us has been the objective or the motive of the government, right? Because this is actually what drives us. So for us, I would say it's been exciting because this is not even like, I'm not about blowing trumpets about government and whatnot. It's just the plain honest truth. We've been privileged to work with a government that is serious, that actually wants to make impact, right? That actually wants to see people, or rather seeing the Enugu thrive. So for us, that has been a major motivation. And it's been exciting. We've been able to, the journey is still continuous. There's a whole lot of things that, the government is still trying to put in place. So yeah, but in the near future, I can tell you that people will begin to, or rather, Enugu will begin to look. It's going to be the human capital base of Africa in the next.
We're getting there.
Next few years.
We have a lot of questions about that. I think someone mentioned it. I think the Honorable Arinze mentioned it. So I think I saw something on is that LinkedIn or something I mentioned. I was like, we'll look at it.
Okay.
Some actual data that can make us have different opinion about that topic. But how would you describe the Enugu business landscape right now? Enugu is known as the city of coal, because it initially was the coal mining city.
Yeah.
How is the business landscape right now?
Okay, so currently, for me, the business landscape on a general term, let me just use the word, is progressive, right? Because I know how it used to be in the last 5 years and where it currently is now, right? And again, for us, people like us who are playing within the states, we're not necessarily looking at businesses that are just within the state, right? We, from Enugu, worked for companies and people outside Nigeria, outside Enugu, in Lagos, in Abuja, and different parts of the world, right? So for us, it's about harnessing the potential, especially the human capital potential, and making it attractive enough to be able to, provide value and give services, provide value, to people from anywhere they are. So it doesn't really matter if you're in Enugu or you're not in Enugu anymore. It's about the value that you carry and being able to, service that value to people who actually need it beyond the shores of Enugu. So yes, but generally I would say progressive because of, this is also like a progressive government, a government that is trying as much as possible to make Enugu State attractive enough for, for investment and also for tourism. So there's been a lot of work that this current administration is doing to make Enugu State attractive enough for investors. So yes, I'm foreseeing that in the next 8 to 10 years, Enugu State will be a very, 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 very huge hotspot for investment. So for me, I think it's even smart for anybody who is a smart investor to start thinking towards Enugu now, because this is an emerging market, this is an emerging ecosystem.
It's early.
It's still in its early formative stages, right? So there's a lot of potentials that are not tapped in Enugu. So anybody who is smart, let's say you want to, do great things in real estate, and you're thinking beyond Lagos and Abuja. Yes, those are very big markets, but there are also markets that are emerging that if you have the opportunity to get into it early now, the proceeds are going to be massive because the development is coming and it's coming at full force, right? So this is a good time for smart investors to actually come into the state.
We'll still talk about what investor, when we say investors should come into a city or a state, the kind of questions investors will be asking about is, what type of investments are mostly viable or currently mostly domiciled in this space, and the current domiciled businesses will determine what kind of other businesses can be attracted to this space physically.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that very soon. But and that question I want to ask is, what is one thing about doing business in Enugu that is just different from doing business in other states? I'm sure you've traveled, you've been in Lagos, you've been in Abuja. When someone says doing business in Ibadan, I can tell you for a fact there's a difference about doing business in Ibadan. What's that one thing that, as clearly as you can explain, this is how it feels like about doing business in Enugu that is different from doing business in other cities?
Well, doing business in Enugu, I would say the advantage that you would have is access to talent, that are a lot more affordable than other places or other regions. Let's say typical talent that you would hire in Enugu will not be as expensive. Well, this is not because dynamics of the environment are different.
So based on the fact that the cost of living is low there.
Exactly. Yes, that gives you the opportunity.
How much is a 3-bedroom flat?
Well, the 3-bedroom flat in Enugu now would go for, let's say, you can get something decent for like 1.5 to million, is the case maybe.
Yes. In a good location.
In a good location compared to the likes of Lagos. Yeah, you're thinking like 5 million, 6 million.
Really?
Abuja here, thinking like a minimum of at least 3.5, 4 million.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one. And also the people as well, people in Enugu, they have to an extent, they have that striving work culture. People, work hard.
Yeah.
People actually, put in effort. The Enugu people are not lazy people. I understand. And not just that, Enugu people are actually hardworking. So that's one major edge. You would be able to get talents who are willing to build with you, who are willing to grow with you, and people who are actually willing to grow with you compared to other cities. Yes, that's one. And then also the environment is calm. If you compare, working
in environment is calm, very important.
Is a huge difference. I mean, you don't have to. The whole concept of waking up very early, I know that has been largely, reduced by remote work and all of that stuff. But for very traditional corporate companies and other businesses that still have to show up at work every day, the dynamics are different. In Enugu, everywhere is, there's a good road network, and so to an extent it's minimal traffic, so you can get to anywhere you need to get to at the time frame that you're supposed to get there. So yeah, that's a very huge advantage. The environment, the people, and the talents. Yeah, so that's it.
According to the last estimates, Abuja has less than 2 million, 3 million people in terms of population. And when you look at the charts of startup ecosystem chart, in Nigeria, after Lagos, Abuja is most likely considered the next place. Then we have Ibadan that is coming up as well. So that's, when I was asking people, I'm speaking with Michael, what questions do you have? One question someone asked was, Enugu has less than 5 million people in terms of population.
Yes.
And the reason why everyone flocks to Lagos is because
the numbers.
Lagos has more than 25 million people. There's no how you want to sell your market. There's someone that will buy it in Lagos. Like, it's not, you can be the worst in marketing. Someone will buy your product in Lagos, right? Because there's just too much people.
Yes.
And then they are cramped in a small land. So you could just take your item before you cross the Keja, you're sold out. Right?
Exactly. True.
And the reason why Abuja is because the government sits here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so people are just having offices in Abuja just because the government is here.
Yes.
Right. And that has made us calculate certain things to associate certain progresses in the startup ecosystem in Abuja to, a startup is doing well in Abuja. But it's because we have the government and then we can easily have access for policies, we can have access to government support and
Yeah.
So for a city like Enugu, roughly around 20% of the population of Lagos, what are that advantage? You mentioned something on your IG, the youth population, right? And how is that an advantage for a city like Enugu in terms of like attracting business opportunity?
Okay, so yeah, attracting business opportunities, I tend to look at it from a standpoint of, again, the human capital, right? If you look at the population dynamics of Enugu, we have more young people.
Yeah.
In Enugu, and if you even look at the academic standpoint, we have a lot more tertiary institutions than most states. So that tells you that there's a teeming young population, right?
Yeah.
A teeming young population that would be of good benefit, great workforce, right? So if I was thinking of setting up a business, I don't mind having my workforce coming from Enugu.
Okay.
Yes, that's one major advantage. There's a lot of young people in Enugu, right? And it's relatively good. There's a high literacy rate, over 90% in Enugu. So an average young person in Enugu is very, very literate. So that's a very, very huge
90%.
Yes, over 90% literacy.
Okay.
So that's a very huge advantage. And the teeming population of young people. So again, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of the human capital, right? That's the major advantage Enugu State has, and that is why the government is focused on, building around education to harness the potential of those young people, for them to now start, attracting businesses set up here, to even work remotely from where they are. And of course, they're going to be spending that money in Enugu, right?
Yes.
Because of course, the environment is conducive for you. It's not super rowdy.
Are you seeing Enugu like a possible manufacturing hub or a possible tech talent hub?
So I'm seeing it more of a tech talent hub, more. But in the long run, yes, there are also opportunity for, the manufacturing aspect of things to spring up. Yes, you would have, of course, if you go to 90 Mile, there are a lot of manufacturing companies there. There's a manufacturing hub there. And a lot of young people are also looking into manufacturing, like us right now. We recently branched into FMCG, our first line of products on spices. It's called Mame Foods. So yeah, we're actually setting up a factory currently, about 5-ton production capacity factory. So in the next few years, you're going to see a lot of, so that's the thing about young, as long as you have people who are thinking, right, within an environment, there is prone to be a lot of massive innovation in diverse sectors. But now there's a lot of concentration in tech at the moment. But I also foresee a lot
Why
of
is that?
diversification. Well, because tech obviously looks more attractive. There's this trend, especially from 2018, the tech boom era, where, there were a lot of tech startups springing up, raising funds, doing amazing things. So, the whole concept of a tech pro, tech sis, it really influenced a lot of people, and everybody just wants to get into tech.
This is what success looks like. This is what I'm going to do.
Exactly. So a lot of people, tend to lean towards it. It's not like, and as much as possible, within the Enugu SME Center, I've also tried to diversify the training and, the opportunities across other sectors as well, not just concentration in tech. Currently we have a training program on animation, partnership with Magic City Labs, so yeah, the most important thing is to harness, these talents and make, let them begin to become useful members of the society. As for what is going to happen in the next 10, 20 years, I know that a lot of things are going to happen in diverse sectors. Yes, there's a bit of concentration in tech right now, but we are also going to be seeing a shift over time. There are a lot of people that are doing great things in hardware tech. Currently, I don't know if you know of Green Age Technologies.
I didn't.
That's another startup in Enugu that
They
is
didn't want
doing
making solar battery.
exactly, yeah. They are doing great things within that, ecosystem as well. So you're going to be seeing a lot of diversified, a lot of diversified innovations
What is
around
tech
diverse
like?
sectors.
What is tech like in Enugu? Knowing that Zen Finance. So whenever I think about startup from Enugu,
Yeah.
the only person that comes to mind is CEO of Zen Finance.
Yeah.
And then I just assume, this is my assumption. So that's why I'm going to ask you the question. What is tech like in Enugu? I assume that I spoke to someone also from Enugu, is a developer. I wanted to hire him to build like a blockchain kind of thing. So that gave me an idea that if you want to build crypto product, Enugu guys,
Yes.
Port Harcourt guys, they are the place to go. So what is tech like in it? I may be
So
wrong.
mostly tech is, we don't have a lot of active, a lot of tech companies, unlike Lagos, or any other region, but we have talent. That is one
What
thing.
areas are the talent more concentrated on?
So it's diverse from, blockchain. There's an active Web3 community in Enugu, right? There's an active blockchain community.
And you think the reason why there's a massively active blockchain community is because of Zen Finance, or it's just that like there's this thing in Nigeria is if the millionaire from a city is into
emerges, from a particular,
and that guy is in real estate, literally everyone in that area starts doing real estate.
Exactly, true.
And
true. Yeah, there's been a massive influence from the spring up of Zen Finance. Yes, that's a massive boost in that area. But you also see people who are also following trends and also doing their own research, right?
Okay.
You'd see people trying out stuff in AI, which to an extent, I wouldn't say that there's any AI startup in Enugu at the moment, but you see a lot of developers branching into AI as well. So really, I feel it's a function of, because the exposure is there. People are on the internet. People are seeing where, the trends are moving to. People are seeing where the opportunities are, and they are developing themselves in that area, in those areas. So yeah, there is a massive, the influence of having, a product spring up from the States, had its own influence, but there's also that thing about people also following trends. You see a lot of young talents from, they go for events in Lagos, they go for events in Abuja, they're networking, they're meeting people, they're joining new communities, they're bringing it back home. You understand? So that has been really it. That's, that learning and exchange culture has also influenced a lot of talents to adopt, go into new technologies, the emerging technologies within the States.
It's more like what do I focus my attention on? Let's go out and see what the world is building, and then blockchain Web3 seems to be what, and they come back and they have like a massive concentration of communities.
Yeah,
around.
even in the gaming, even in like the gaming sector, you see a couple of guys doing well. Although yes, that it also has ties to Zen Finance. Exactly, they have their gaming company now, and they have a product now. I think it's Hammer Games. Yes, so you would also see, I've seen two, three gaming companies, or young people that are actually playing within that, ecosystem now, within that space now. So yeah, the influence of people actually doing real things is there. And then the influence of people also having like cultural exchange and, learning from what they see on the research they've also done is also there as well. So yeah, it's just like us. Really, it's not like when we moved into FMCG, it's not like there was a very big FMCG company in Enugu that we're looking up to, and there was one very big FMCG company in Abuja that we're looking. No, it was just based on interest, one, and based on research, right? So part of the things that motivated us was, when we looked into the African market, especially in the Nigerian market, you find a lot of unhealthy and inorganic products. In fact, 70% of the spices and the seasoning that we have within the market are inorganic.
And a lot of them are imported.
Yes, and
A lot of the trusted ones are imported.
Yes, a lot of them are also imported. Of course, there are also a lot of big players that are here in Nigeria that are doing so well, but there's a gap as well, and that is what we are plugging into. So it wasn't really a function of okay, there's someone in Enugu that is doing this thing and want to go into it. You understand? So you have cases like that as well. So yeah.
I mean, moving from media tech and into FMCG is just a massive jump. It says, and basically following your story with Mami Food is quite interesting. Picking a non-perishable item to sell first. Spice can last on the shelf for about 2 years plus.
Exactly. Yes.
So once you've thought about inventory, you're not thinking about loss. Like, oh, it's going to get bad, I have to get it off shelf. So now you have the product, you just focus on distribution. How do we get this on more shelves and more people using it? And as long as they are organic product, and they are designed specifically for our palates, like the jollof rice mix, for example,
Yeah.
or the pepper soup mix or stuff like that. Very unique, beautiful. I'm sure I wanted to talk a lot about the FMCG at some point.
Okay, that's fine. We can go into that. So, pretty much, okay. So the real story is, we actually lost. So it was just more or less like a coincidence. I and Christian, we're having a conversation. We're just talking about, the FMCG space, discussing like companies, UAC Food, WAC Food, and trying to really know what these guys are actually doing that makes them stand out. So we've had like a lot of conversations around, like even in our early years when we're discussing some of the things that would likely
to expand
branch into. Yeah. So FMCG came up, had those talks. But what actually really inspired it to a great extent was when, there were so many cases of people having, adverse health conditions. You see a lot of young people are having like blood pressure. You see a lot of people in their 60s who are not so old. See a lot of cases of slump and died. And to us, and we even at the time we lost a friend to cancer, and we discovered that one of the major reasons for all these major health conditions is what we eat, what people consume.
True.
Right? Yes, a lot of people eat out. A large chunk of people also make their own dishes. But, are we really paying attention to what we're using to make our food? Those ingredients that we're putting into our food, how healthy is it? And what are the side effects, to our health? Right?
I used to like hot chili sauce. And one day, I actually like hot chili sauce, sesame seed oil, all these oils you can use to make stir fry rice and the rest. So
Yeah.
one of these, we went to the supermarket, and my wife was just on the aisle for a while. Why pick this sauce? Let's go. She said she's noticing some these changes on the labels that she doesn't think they're the same. And that's how we started this research. I realized that there are more than 5, 6, 7, 8 copies of the same chili oil. And we can't really find chili sauce, and we can't really find the original chili sauce. And how did she find out? She bought one chili sauce. We went home. We tried to make the food, and she put it in, and the smell
was different.
So is it not the same chili sauce we used to buy? Why is this smelling different? And so we poured the food away. Like, we're not sure. We read the label. It's the same thing, but the smell is different. Now, imagine someone that is not a lover of chili sauce. They will not know the difference between the fake chili sauce. Now, imagine you going to multiple supermarkets and you couldn't still find your chili sauce. And about 2 years now, we've not had chili sauce.
Wow.
Just because of that.
Wow. So I think the issue of, fake or adulterated products is a very, very big issue in the FMCG space. You'd see brands that are doing well, and a lot of people will just go out and start making the copies. It's a very, very huge challenge. And as much as possible, we are also looking into that. We're still in our early years, but, we're watching closely. And, you may not be able to monitor these things.
But what you're doing differently now, for what I see, is you're doing DTC.
Sorry?
You're doing DTC. direct to customer.
Yes,
So you can order online and you can get your pack of.
Yeah, so currently, yes, we're still doing B2C, and we also have like distributors that that we're currently working with, and we are already in a couple of stores. We're urban stores at the moment. We're also trying to get into other stores, as well. So as time goes on, we also intend to put in certain measures to make sure that our products are not adulterated. We're going to be working with specific distributors, people we're going to be putting out. And if you notice, we're very active, online.
Yes.
So we're going to be putting out select places where people can go out and get this product. And they know exactly what they're buying. We've not hit the local market yet.
Yes.
And we're still trying to build strategies that we'll definitely get into the local market. But, the issue about combating fake products is a very big one. And as much as possible, we're trying to see how we can solve that problem so that when we hit the local market, people can be able to differentiate between the actual product and the fake product. Right? Yes, one may say, what makes your product so special that one might want to copy it? We know that our product is unique. We know that, our product is not, it's not.
I don't really think it's a thing of unique. I just think it's a thing of, I promise you, is fresh ingredient. And that's just a see, the reason why I don't buy mixed tea, right, from brands I don't trust, is simply because anyone can put anything inside and call it any tea.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So that's the reason why no matter if you go to the supermarket and you don't find your tea brand, you don't buy it.
You don't buy it, yeah.
And I'm not talking about Lipton and top tea. I drink other kind of teas.
Yeah.
So those kind of teas, that they don't grow in Nigeria, or they grow like from different countries. Like some teas come from Lebanon, some teas come from China or Japan. You only want those brands that you've been sure that the leaves or the dried leaves in the pack are exactly what they say they are.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's also the function of a product that is popular being cloned, right? In fact, nobody wants to clone a product that is not popular because they want to sell out. That's the whole point. And you're only selling out something that has a huge market, right? So those products that you're talking about, there's a tendency that there's a clone, right, of those products in the market. So the best bet is know where you're buying these products from. You understand? Follow these products and know that, they are actually, you're buying it from the right source.
Yeah.
Personally, there are certain things I don't buy in the open market. I go to supermarkets that I trust, that to an extent I believe that these guys will uphold certain standard in
you can hold them
purchasing of their
responsible.
product. Exactly. So but for my regular veggies and other ingredients and stuff, but any packaged product, I usually don't buy them from the open market. A lot of people do their own things differently. A lot of people buy from the open market, yes, but because I also know that there are a lot of these clones of this product out there. A lot, trust me, a lot. But one can only practice certain let's say self-securing procedures that they feel like is good enough for them. And for me, I like to go to certain supermarkets to buy most of this packaged product, especially when it comes to food products.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's really an issue, right? Once your product is popular, trust me, there's a tendency that it's going to be cloned, especially in FMCG.
Once anything is for like the pandemic of
so
fake drinks.
Exactly, fake, especially drinks. You see red wines that you're buying, most of them are fake.
I think someone has bought, a friend of mine has used fake pepper before, because we went to an Airbnb. So we went to a supermarket that's not far from there. We bought pepper and so we went to make Indomie. You put pepper in Indomie, you know what real pepper is. So you have, it's going to be a lot. We put it inside the Indomie and we ate it. It was not pepper at all.
Exactly.
We were not thinking, if it's not going to be hot, is it a fake pepper? Is it something else? And change the color of the noodles.
Trust me, I can tell you for free that being in the spice or being in the food industry, you can't imagine the amount of how deep effect products can go.